Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here, whatever day it is for you. I am clearly not where I usually am. I have been driving, so thank you for being patient, because I know this is a little late, but we are here to do what we watched last week, which, pretty self-explanatory. We are just talking about the movies and the shows and everything we watched last week. Why? Not necessarily to do reviews. I don't want to call these reviews. They are just kind of to be conversations about what they're about, right? So we started last week by watching a lot of movies, specifically starting with The Last Duel by Ridley Scott. And as always, Ridley Scott really delivers this really fine-crafted, well-polished story presented in this epic, grandiozed scope. But it does feel a little gloomy and hollow, and that's probably because of how absolutely shitty the Middle Ages were, and it isn't really romanticized here, and I don't think that's a bad thing. It's a Rashomon-type narrative that retells the same story from multiple perspectives, mostly surrounding the assault of the wife of a failing knight, of a former friend who's now buddies with much higher lords. I want to say kudos to Ridley Scott for taking the assault subject matter really seriously. It was particularly refreshing to see it wasn't played up to be really sexy. Everything is set in period, which I'm sure means there are plenty of anachronisms, although it was also refreshing to see that nothing was romanticized again, even if it makes for an incredibly dreary and depressing production from start to finish. The Last Duel. It was maybe half an hour longer than I would have liked, and because of the story being so heavy and everything else, I don't think I'm going to be putting it on again soon, but it's great to see Ridley Scott's vision in motion, as always. And right after that, something that I had seen before, something that felt was feeling really good in the moment, Batman Under the Red Hood from 2010. And I would say one could put up a fair argument that this is a contender for the best Batman movie. I think it's an uphill battle, but I can definitely see it being an argument. It's about when the newest iteration of the Red Hood rolls into Gotham. He just ruins Batman's day with backstory and late 2000s edge, all while weaving in classic Batman characters like Nightwing and Joker and Ra's al Ghul. Reworking the source material to keep the story entirely within the Batman mythos works seamlessly and has since been incorporated into the larger DC canon for a bit anyway. I'm not entirely sure what it is right now. The cast is directed brilliantly by Andrea Romano, and the cast was pretty top tier when it was originally released, but just about every name has since appreciated in value since, and every single person, I would say, brought their best to this production. The biggest issues we usually have with these lower budget DC productions is the animation, and here the blocking and direction kind of minimize any shortcomings by keeping few characters on the screen at once and focusing on keeping the few characters we do see fluid in their animation. This, coupled with its cast and a strong script, keeps everyone on Bat brand, and this is a really good entry into the Batman canon. And that takes us to Baghead, which was Shudder's new release at the time. And Baghead's going to be pretty hard to not compare to Talk to Me, which came out right around the same time, and I haven't seen it, but considering the time frame in which these came out, I wouldn't be surprised if their similarities were entirely by happenstance, but looking at the Baghead poster, I'm kind of inclined to think not. And in Baghead, our newly orphaned yet somehow even more down on her luck protagonist inherits a pub with its own legally distinct old magical hag in the basement. She and her bestie learn through a patron that the aforementioned Hagalicious Bay lets you talk to deceased loved ones for 2 minutes with, some additional arbitrary rules. I think this production is really well shot. It's really well crafted, but there's no less than 3 times that I have to rewind to understand a certain point in the production, and even then I still feel a little bit lost. I really like the B-plot though, and I thought the B-plot twists were really well incorporated into the overall story pretty seamlessly and well. Overall, I'd say it's a mixed Baghead, but solid job, way to exist. and something I've heard a lot about. I feel like I need to rewatch it. I feel like I missed something here this time around, but The Company of Wolves. It is a series of off-kilter, classic-like fantasy parables that refuse to hold an audience hand in any real aspects, more often than not having to do with wolves. It's really good to see Angela Lansbury do her stuff, and all of the performances throughout the picture really match her energy, whether they share a scene with Angela Lansbury or not. I'd say the visual effects, they may sometimes bite off more than they can chew, but, well, like, sometimes it looked good, but a little weird, but it never looked so funny at its worst that it took me out of the production. I think I need to rewatch it again, probably soon. And what else did we watch? We watched Vindicta, which is from the same director of Dangerous Game, The Legacy Murders, which I did not love last week. This wants to be a classic mystery slasher more akin to maybe the first Friday the 13th over its Jason following sequels. Vindicta stands out by also following first responders, as well as setting itself in the darkest caricature of a city I have ever seen. This is worse than Gotham. I like the imagery of our slasher. It's this Roman theme, and he has this marble mask. It really makes the character stand out. He uses a bunch of Roman weapons, but his reason for choosing his theme is dumb as hell. Not even his backstory, just the choosing of his theming. The dumbest reason to ever choose a theme to be a slasher. The performances are all equally fine, I guess, except for maybe Sean Astin. I was expecting a little more. His decline feels a little more sleepy than it should be, than I think it was maybe intended. And the script is a little overwritten. I think dialogue fills scenes that could be eerie, but are just filled with this unnecessary exposition throughout. I also thought the finale was crazily over-directed, like directed to death in the best way possible. And it didn't make up for everything else I didn't love in the movie, but it definitely, I still found it entertaining. And what else did we watch? We watched The Incredible Hulk, and this was right before I started traveling. And The Incredible Hulk, it does continue to stand out from its brother and sister movies in the MCU to me. It's a touch darker with a little more cynicism baked into a man-on-the-run superhero story. It has 3 equally unique action sequences that escalate both complexity and intensity, and I really like that. I think in a typical story, we would have had Bruce Banner working up to get stronger and stronger and stronger, versus in this one we have Tim Roth, the antagonist, who's working his way to get stronger. We're following the antagonist growing in strength instead of the protagonist, and that's really interesting, and they really incorporate it into each of the action sequences. But this is all around a pair of really seemingly underwhelmed to be in their own movie leads. I think Edward Norton is trying to do this calm, Bruce Banner needs to be calm all the time voice, and that comes off as not having any emotion at all, unfortunately. And I think that paired with Liv Tyler's natural airy cadence, there are extended sequences where I just feel like I am being told a bedtime story. And that's never been a problem in previous viewings, but this time it really hit hard for me. This movie also colors the US military in a really non-heroic light that I found it really, the organization would have backed the movie as significantly as it did. It really feels like someone played a joke on the US military and it went over everybody's heads. Despite my criticisms on Norton and Tyler, who are way successful and better than I will ever be, Tim Roth brings a crazy amount of energy to the performance, and everybody else brings a lot of energy here. I think the Hulk, when we have the Hulk, is really good presence, and it's my favorite look for the Hulk. It might be my favorite movie iteration of the Hulk as well. This is one of the MCU movies I do end up returning to the most. Does it make it the best? I don't know, but I wouldn't say it's the best. I just return to it a lot. And finally, something new. Abigail, Radio Silence's new production that came out just this last weekend. It's another entry in the sub horror genre where we lock a bunch of pretty bad people in a house with an exceptionally worse person, and this time it's just a vampire ballerina and with the charm of a Radio Silence production. The production itself is crafted with great care, not so much about building the tension as much as other movies, as it's focused on straight straightforward scaring you and thrills, if that makes sense. It almost toes the line between, like, action horror, especially in that final act. I think Alicia Ware, I believe that's how we say her name, does stand out as our titular Abigail, but everyone brings small things to their characters that really keep things memorable and makes you remember everyone, really. Despite everything I did like about Abigail, it felt a little off to me, but I can't exactly place why, and that doesn't feel like a valid criticism. Maybe the humor just didn't land with me as well as other Radio Silence productions. I'm unsure, but I like this a lot. Not as much as other Radio Silence movies like Ready or Not or the previous 2 Scream movies, but I'm really happy to have Abigail. Definitely. No questions at all. And I'm also catching up on my Star Wars. I've been catching up on my Star Wars throughout the week, and I finally finished Tales of the Jedi to get ready for Tales of the Empire coming up. Tales of the Jedi was less of an anthology than I expected. Yes, it tells 6 different and distinct Jedi-related stories, but every single one of them is either about Ahsoka Tano or Count Dooku. And 2 characters that I find incredibly interesting since they both decidingly leave the titular order. The city also directs a spotlight on the hypocrisy and the dangers that the power of the Jedi Council hold and how dangerous that is. Extremely powerful subjects that I think were handled pretty well throughout a 6-episode series. Where the animation of other Star Wars series has never been a huge issue for me, the character designs here didn't quite feel as on point to me. They're somewhere in between that wooden, blocky puppet style that I love from the Clone Wars and the 2B action figure look that the characters get in Rebels. Otherwise, I have no crazy complaints about the series, so not liking the character design feels like a really bullshit complaint to me. I think this is just such a great and excellent thing to exist in the Star Wars canon currently. And we got back on a little Doctor Who kick that we started at the beginning of the year with Doctor Who: The Keys of Marinus. After an entirely deleted adventure with Marco Polo, our faithful travelers find themselves, not for the first nor the last time, tasked with getting the titular MacGuffins of Marinus, which largely end up being more or less of an excuse to put Ian in a sham trial for a classic lesson on ethics, really. And with Ian on trial, it gives Barbara another chance to shine, and I think Barbara really does get to shine by doing a bunch of detective work, while the Doctor reveals why he didn't choose to call himself the lawyer as a name. I wish the story had a little more cohesion. There doesn't seem to be a good reason that the keys and the trial plots should, like, intersect or match together. It just kind of happens. I think they're 2 tropey but solid plots that don't mesh for me, but it's finally another chance for Barbara to shine. I want to also take this time to shout out YouTube creators and the stuff they put out here, because I think a lot of the stuff on YouTube, especially the long-form stuff, is as professional as any productions we see anywhere else. And right now, last week, I got a chance to watch the Gaming Historian's most recent documentary on the Oregon Trail, the story of the Oregon Trail, as it is titled on YouTube. It's about the history of the iconic game, where I don't know if you learned to or I don't know if you played it when you were younger, but I played it going through high school, where you travel the titular Oregon Trail. It was a passion project between a few friends that blew up when it went public for schools. And then the revamp was made by people who really believed in that original vision, that original educational vision, that just wanted to make it a little updated and more fun. And they really believed in that educational aspect, and that ended up driving the Oregon's trail's success, I would say, because so many people got to play it that way. The Gaming Historian has always been great. He has these unique art pieces that make his long work form really stand out, and I think it's always really well narrated. He's got a great voice for the narration, and every episode has been impeccably researched as far as I can tell. It feels like this is what the History Channel used to put out, right? Like documentaries. I have a bunch of old History Channel documentaries that I still think have value, just with a laser focus on video games and the video game industry. I think he's putting out really good stuff, and he consistently has for years. Yeah, check out the Gaming Historian. And yeah, I should get back to On the Road. Thank you for being here and being with me and try and do something good today, right? Yeah, try and do something good today.